All right, Audrey, while we wait for more people to join, why don't we kind of do some quick introductions? If you would like to kick off, discuss a little bit about who you are, who BBSI is. Thank you for those that are joining for a repeat webinar. Lakeside hosts webinars pretty often, some every other month about. This is our second webinar in the Colorado family. So I'll let Audrey kind of introduce herself. And then for those of you that are joining on for the first time, thank you for attending.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Jake. My name is Audrey Seavalt. So I am an HR consultant for BBSI, which is the PEO here in Denver. And I've been also an HR practitioner for 41 years. So I like to say to people, I started in HR when there was big hair and huge shoulder pads. That was in vogue back when I started. And I've also been an adjunct professor for the University of Denver Strategic HR program for 25 years. And I typically grade capstones or master's theses for these students. And they teach me all the latest, newest trends with lots of research done. So I'm always tuned into future trends and things that people really care about, particularly the younger generation. So got a lot of constant learning going on. I'm also a geek, a professed geek. So when Family came out, I went out there and talked to the head of the agency. I've met with her a couple of times just to get to know her. She's a lovely person. And also spoke to the agency at length about just all the stuff that's out there about the program. And so just love sharing. I'm a teacher at heart, so I'm not an attorney, just FYI, I'm not an attorney. So I do love to share this with the intent being that it's easy for anyone running a business and their employees to understand it. It feels daunting, but I think that we've gleaned it down to some key things today that will make it easy to live with, as easy as possible to live with. So that's me, Jake. So how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. And for those that don't know what a PEO is, which is what BBSI is, they help with payroll, they help with workers' compensation, they can do health benefits. You get Audrey and their HR team over there. They do safety and risk management. So Lakeside partners with BBSI to help a lot of our clients that need help with outsourcing their payroll. Obviously, Audrey is fantastic, and being able to utilize her HR services makes your life a lot easier. Employee handbooks, things like that. But my name is Jake Charon. I'm a risk architect at Lakeside Insurance. So why do I have architect in my name? It's because we help design programs, whether it's risk management programs, insurance programs, different plans to help mitigate risk. And Lakeside kind of has a different approach to insurance than a lot of agencies, and a lot of people kind of view insurance as, hey, I'm paying for it, let's use it for claims, where we want to try to prevent losses from happening. So figuring out different ways that we can be creative, one of which is helping you by saving money and getting better coverage by going off of a public state plan for the Colorado family, which we'll kind of talk about, and going on a private plan. So learning what those savings can look like as you head into 2026 can be a pretty big fiscal note for your company. Lakeside's been around 26 years. We're a private insurance agency. And we like partnering with good people. I read a quote today that kind of talked about life is all about waking up and being excited to look forward to go to work and look forward to going home from work too. So let's try to be positive and help each other out. And so kind of what we're going to be touching on today in this webinar is what is the FAMLI or family program, what that looks like for 2026, how the updated requirements are going to impact your business and the payroll, any sort of compliance tips, administrative best practices, and really just any answers that you might have around family. So please ask questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. I will slow down the webinar and stop Audrey from kind of continuing on so we can answer those questions. And I mentioned earlier, if you would like to discuss further about the private plans or any general questions for Audrey or I will send out a recording. I'll send our contact information. You can reach out whenever. And again, thank you to those that have joined for multiple webinars. Thank you to those of you that are on for the first time. And we appreciate everything you guys are doing. So let's kick off, Audrey, and help out the small businesses here in Colorado.
Yes, and just as an FYI, I will PDF this presentation. It's got some live links for source materials on the website that you can access on your own. So we'll make that really easy for you. There's a lot of information on this presentation. I apologize in advance for some busy slides, but the goal is for you to have the fundamentals behind you, and you can look this up later as a source document in addition to Family's website. So Jake, why don't you go ahead and advance? I'm assuming I can advance. Can I advance or can you advance?
I'll be controlling
All
for
right,
you
that's
today, so you don't have to worry about it.
all right, cool. So let's go back to family. So the website has a spot where you can access utilization, actual, how many employees have used the benefits, and it's updated every 30 minutes. So as of yesterday, from November 23rd, 2024 to yesterday, there have been a total of about 286,000 claims submitted to the state. And you can see there that the largest number of claims has been for people to care for themselves. They have a health condition where they need to take time off. Many are taking bonding leave. These are for people that either adopt or have men who have babies. The bonding time, that really stands out. So there's a lot of utilization there. Caring for a family member, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but about 37,000 people have accessed that. Then you've got pregnancy, about 16,000. The domestic violence piece, only 5,300, and of course, around 500 for military leave. We'll talk more about what those entail later, but you want to see the statistics here that really go. I mean, if you don't remember where family came from, it was voted into place in 2020 through Proposition 118. So Colorado residents voted this in. The tax began to be deducted, or everybody owed taxes starting in 2023, and then the benefits were rolled out when the agency was fully functional back in January 1st, 2024. So it's been around a while, and people are accessing it. So go ahead, Jake. Next slide.
Yeah, and like Audrey said, if you haven't looked at your paycheck in more detail, it might not look like a big number, but if you're on the state plan, it's a 0.9% rate, meaning that 0.9% of your paycheck would be taken out and paid towards family, where actually 0.445 comes from the employer and 0.45 comes from the employee. But we'll talk on some of the private plans later where we can get down to 0.6 or 0.7 rates, so making a difference for the employee and the employer.
That's awesome. All right, so on to the next slide. So how much has the agency paid out some average numbers? Well, average leave has ended up being about 51 days, which is the equivalent to about 10 weeks people have taken. And then the average weekly payment is about $900 a week. And the payout so far is over $1.1 billion that's been paid out since November 23rd. So that's a pretty staggering number that the agency's been paid. The good news is they're not insolvent. I mean, the agency is actually doing fine. They're getting in money, as much money as they need to pay these benefits, but it's still something it's a pretty big number. So on to the next slide. So it's being used quite a bit. So what I want to talk about is just some essentials you need to know. First of all, Jake had mentioned the taxes, the tax payouts. On to the next slide. You can see that the taxes this year are 0.9% until December 31st of this year. All employees are required by law to pay 0.45%, and then employers pay, with 10 or more employees, pay 0.45 for a total of 0.9. And the cap is about 176,000 at that point. After 176,000, you don't pay any more taxes. For 2026, the rate actually is going down to 0.88. It's an absolutely negligible amount. So employees will see the tax go down to 0.44. Employers with 10 or more employees will pay 0.44 as well. And we still don't know what the pay cap is going to be yet. That hasn't come out yet. So that's the latest and greatest on taxes.
When do you think they're going to release the pay cap?
I imagine they'll do it in the third or fourth quarter. They have their own timeline, so it's up to them. But we'll keep a close eye, and I'm sure it'll come out later by the end of this year for sure. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be out by that time. All right, so let's do some quick reviews. There's a benefits and premium calendar. So if your employees come to you and say, hey, how much am I going to get for my benefits? I would say go to the family website, and there's a calculator that tells you how much you're going to pay. Don't try and calculate that. It's on a sliding scale. Hold there, Jake, just for a second. It's on a sliding scale where they use the individual's average weekly wage. They go back 5 calendar quarters, very similar to unemployment. And they look at then the average weekly wage for the state of Colorado, and it has increased over time. As you well know, you're all dealing with higher minimum wage. That has impacted the average weekly wage for the state. So on to the next one. So the change for 2025 is that as July 1st, the state's average weekly wage is $1,534.94. The maximum weekly amount is 90% of the state average weekly wage, or about $1,300, $1,400. That's what employees could get if they get 90% of the benefit of the state weekly wage. And on to the next one. So if an individual is making less or equal to $767 a week, they will receive the benefit payment from family of 90% of their wages. So that equates to about $40,000. That's so you can expect that those people who make 40,000 or less will get 90% of their wages while they're on family leave. Everybody else, it's going to be 50%, which is not substantial. In fact, if anything, people will just go, well, that's a big whoop. I mean, I'm not really going to get all excited about it, up to the maximum weekly benefit of $1,300 a week. So wages that are counted toward your average weekly wage are gross wages that are salary, your hourly rates, overtime. People get tips and bonuses, any variable pay like commissions, piece rate, any PTO or vacation, sick time they get, disability benefits that are paid for by the employer. So disability benefits, if an employee says, I'm going to pay short-term disability myself, that counts toward wages, not by third party, or not like a insurance company that offers short and long-term disability. Parental leave that a company pays for. So many larger corporations actually have their own parental leave payouts they give to employees. So that's counted toward wages. And then, of course, the cost of lodging as a credit for minimum wage. So that's what starts as how it's calculated. What isn't calculated as wages is the benefits like life insurance, FSA, like dependent care, HSA, health savings accounts, like the medical ones, any pre-tax Section 125 cafeteria plans that are paid out, severance, deferred compensation plans, any kind of profit sharing employees receive. You can see there it runs down to pensions, expense. These are all, pretty much not direct payouts that are given to employees. That's not counted toward family leave. So exactly what is family leave? And I'm sure you go, oh, I know what that is. Well, if you had employees use family leave, you know what it is. But if you haven't in a while, it's probably not a bad idea for you to just get some basics. So on to the next slide. So what events do you think an employee will come to you for when they want to access? When they have a baby, that's typically the most common use, or when they're sick themselves, when they have to care for a family member when they're in a serious health condition. And I will talk about that in a second. Caring for yourself if you're seriously ill. And family sees it as like a life-changing event of some sort where you're out for an extended period of time. Now, before I go keep going. There you go. And any deployments, and then safe housing. Now, I want to talk about this family member with a serious health condition, because I could see some employees saying, my dad in Colorado Springs is really sick and I'm going to take care of him. It's a very noble effort, but that does not count toward family. The way family works is that the agency decides whether or not the relationship is familial. And the way they categorize that is that there has to be some shared financial responsibility. The employee would have to show shared leases, common ownership of a property, joint liability for bills, designation of beneficiary. This person would need to be an emergency contact. There might be some expectations of care created by the relationship, cohabitation, and geographic proximity. So it's not a slam dunk for me to say, I'm going to go take care of my dad in Colorado Springs, because the agency says, no, there's a whole lot of other things we want to see if you're that person's truly a family in the context of getting benefits. Okay, so employees have to understand that the agency is the one that decides that. So if you hear them say, well, I'm going to go take care of my mom in Fort Collins, great, but check with family first to see if that even qualifies for family. Okay.
Right.
If it doesn't, all of the rules that apply to family do not apply. So that's really important to note. So
And I
on
think
to the
that
next. Go
And
ahead.
I think that's important. The last part that you said too, Audrey, is that the employer doesn't try to stick their nose in it or tell them what they can or can't do. Always just point
Right.
back to whether you're on the state plan or the private plan because it's not your choice with the employer. This is the benefit if they want to take it. But what is important, and we need to talk about this too a little bit, Audrey, is that if Jake wants to use it or if Audrey wants to use family, absolutely we can. It's approved, but you can only use it once in a year. So you need to make
Right.
sure that you're utilizing it for something that really matters because what if you get horribly sick later in the year or another family member gets sick? Again, it's
Mhm.
we don't want to think about the bad things, but that's kind of what we're here to do is plan for the when issues happen.
Right. And I would say the role of the employer is simply to facilitate the process and not to judge. I mean, it's tempting to say, you don't look that sick. Maybe somebody says, I have to go check into a rehab facility. They look perfectly fine. That is not your call as the employer. What you do is say, go ahead and go through family. Family will inform you as the employer what's going on, whether they do qualify or don't qualify. And I would just say, hold off doing anything with the employee until you get official notice from family, from the agency. It's really important to note because I'll talk later about retaliation potential here in this law, much like many laws that have or employment laws, there's always a clause of retaliation, which is usually the most common legal claim that employees put against their employers. So we want to be super careful at this point in time. I would say there's yeah, good news, no change from the old family. But I do want to say it's super important, and I'll talk about this later too, that you're super nice to the employee about this. You got to teach your managers to be very nice and helpful with the employee. I know we typically are, but I've run into situations where people say, you can't, no, you can't take family. No, not okay with me. You're fired. That's completely illegal now under the family world. So it's much more prudent to be careful. All right, so what are the changes? The big change for this year has been that family has extended its family benefits to an additional 12 weeks for NICU or neonatal intensive units for very, very sick babies. So if somebody has a seriously ill baby once they're born, the parents have an additional 12 weeks. That's the big change benefits wise. All right, so who's eligible? Who gets to have family? Well, every employee in Colorado who's worked more than $2,500 or who's earned more than $2,500 is eligible for family. They're eligible to take family leave. Seasonal workers, it's a little bit more nuanced. You can see here the language is 20 or more weeks at work for a work week, which is very hard to understand in my mind that a full work week would be one day. So this is where it gets really kind of convoluted. And my advice would be that you talk to family if you have seasonal workers to fully understand what that means and how that impacts your business. And because last thing you need is a seasonal worker to come in and say, I'm taking family leave the whole growth season. That's a real problem. And so keep going, Jake.
Yep, and we did get a question. So once we get
Oh,
through
good.
these,
Let's ask. Go ahead
I'll
and
slow
ask it.
us down. No,
Okay.
I'll let you talk through these two and then
Okay.
we'll answer Jenny's
So what?
question.
So it gets confusing when there's a multi-state employer. Like, let's say the employer is based in New York, and you have several Colorado employees, several Texas employees. You have employees all over the country. How does that work? Only the Colorado employees have access to family benefits and the family protections. So what I've done, because that gets very weird, is my advice to you is if you have handbooks that say family leave, you make sure it's specific to Colorado employees. You make sure you have separate policies by state that then you can manage much better and that your management team knows how to handle. All right. So last thing to remember is all employees are eligible for family, regardless of the size. The only thing that matters in the family world is the taxes. If you have 10 or more employees, you pay the employer tax. Otherwise, the family benefit itself is for all Colorado employees. All right, go ahead, Jake, ask that question.
All right, thank you for your question that's coming in. So this was on the last slide. So for the
Mhm.
NICU change, for the neonatal, is that regarding 2025 or for 2026?
It's 2025. It was enacted in 2025.
So this year they were able to start taking
Yes.
that.
Yep. Yeah. And I could give an exact date for you if you're interested, but yeah, that was enacted in 2025.
Okay. Yeah, and I think what's good to know too is everything Audrey's talking about, if you have one employee, you are required to have Colorado family and you are required to be paying this tax through the state. Now, for Lakeside, if you want to get onto a private plan with us, we need a minimum of 10 employees for your business. But again, we've had situations where we can help people where a business owner owns a few different businesses that equals up to 10 employees, then that also works, but we do need common ownerships. And again, not to get too much into it, we can always discuss that at a later date. So hopefully that answered your question, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny, for your question. So now we're going to get to the busyness here. So Family has lots of information on their website. Again, I would not try and explain Family to employees. This is the photo of the website for employees. That's what they can go look into, and I encourage you to send that their way. There's also a legal poster that tells employees you should have a legal posting somewhere in either in your handbook or on your legal posters that talks about Family. So let's move on to the next slide. So what does this entail? What does this application process entail? Well, the employees have to submit their application with all supporting documents to the Family Division. You do not have access to this. They have to do it in advance if possible. Now, we all know that sometimes things happen, but where it's foreseeable, like if a person is pregnant or planning for some surgery, they should provide that notice 30 days prior to the start of leave. However, there are times when things just happen, and when they do happen, they have up to 30 days after the event to apply for benefits. Now, assuming they filed the claim properly, the Family Division works very fast. And this is the one thing that I find highly surprising, that they are fast. They get this stuff processed, and employees receive benefits within 2 weeks of their application, and after the agencies receive their application and approved it. And then employees will get paid through Family, not through you, through Family every 2 weeks for the duration of their leave. From the standpoint of taxes, the state taxes, there are no state income tax. They get a 1099-G, but federal tax, it's a lot of ambivalence around that. So my advice would be probably file their tax when they get the 1099-G. They have to file it as taxable income. Okay.
All right.
All right.
We got one quick question.
Okay.
How do we get a hold of the posters? When we signed up for the private plan, there was only a welcome letter.
Oh, so if you have the private plan, your vendor, whoever you're working with, should have the poster available, and you should put that in your handbook too and post it.
Yeah, and they're
They
they're
have a
all on they're all on the websites that the private
Mhm.
companies have. So
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. So you should get those, and I would encourage you to post those. Now, what happens if the employee is denied leave? Well, they can appeal it. So even if you find out that their leave was denied, it's not time to say, get back to work or else I'm firing you. They could appeal it. And so if you want to make your life complicated, you could say you're fired or getting notice for poor performance right after you get the denial from the agency. They appeal it and they win. What a mess you have now with reinstating the employee and dealing with some legal risk along with it. So again, I'm a big advocate for be nice, work with the employee as you can. Typically, these appeals go quickly, but just going to have to be patient through this process because it is one of those things that's very much under a legal umbrella around retaliation. So I would suggest you be super careful. All right, so let's talk about the process some more. It's all handled on Family's website. Now, there is a new feature. That's why I highlight everything's highlighted red, brand new for 2025. What's new here is that there's an HR benefits dashboard. It's where employers can see what's going on with each employee's claim. So go ahead and advance to the next bullets there. You can see when their benefit or family starts. You can see the status of their claim, and you can give lots of HR people or managers access to this so they can see in real time what's going on with the employee's family claim. Now, you may ask the question of, can I see what's going on with the employee? Well, Family will not allow you to see anything. They won't. They will not tell you what the condition is, what the health information is. It's under the HIPAA umbrella. So I would not push for information about the health condition of the employer. The dependent's really protected under some privacy laws. If the employee volunteers it, fine, but it's something you should be super careful with and not asking too many pieces. And the state is very, very particular about that. So on to the next slide. All right, so let's talk about how you as the employer can have a really, you just heard this law. It feels pretty complex, a little scary usually. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple other things that make life more complicated. First of all, if you have 50 or more employees, You're under also the Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. It's been around since forever. Basically, what it does is it protects people's jobs for a period of up to 12 weeks and benefits. All right. That process is a separate process from family. And so if you have an employer with 50 or more employees, you should ask the employee to fill out there's federal forms. I can provide access to those too. I'll give you the links on the federal website. Those forms ask for all kinds of information about the health condition, which you keep on file. You got to keep it locked up. But this is where the doctor has to sign off that this person has a condition that qualifies for FMLA. So it runs in tandem with FAMLI. The only difference between FMLA and FAMLI is that FMLA is not paid. Family is. It's basically it, but both the criteria of job protection and benefits protection is the same for both laws. Now, what about paid sick leave? Healthy Family Workplace Act, what we affectionately call HFWA, paid sick leave. According to the agency, they say it should not be used for family events. That isn't to say it's forbidden, but HFWA is intended for mild illnesses, and family is intended for major issues, major health issues. So you can use it if you want to, but the agency themselves discourage employees from using it. So on to the next slide. Are there any questions so far?
No, we're doing good. If anyone
All right,
has any
good.
other questions, please feel free to shoot them in the chat, and I will slow us down a little bit. But
Okay.
we'll keep marching forward because there's obviously a lot of
No
information.
worries. Slow me down anytime. I'm a geek. I tend to go fast, so just slow me down if need be. All right. So what about paid time off or vacation? And how does it work with family? Employers are not allowed to force employees to use PTO, sick time, or vacation while on family. You're not permitted to say you have to do that. Now with FMLA, it used to be permitted, but family doesn't permit that. If an employee wants to use it, that's fine. You can actually say, yeah, go ahead and use your PTO if you want to, fine. Let's say, for example, they want to offset their lower pay. Let's say I'm making 50% of my pay and I got plenty of PTO to offset that to get to 100% pre-FAMLI to come up with my salary that helps me pretty much be whole throughout family. Totally fine. You can do that. You can offset family. Just don't overpay them, because if you overpay them, the agency will want to collect back any of the overpayments, which is painful for the employee. So be careful in making sure that the amounts are no more than 100% of their pre-family pay. Absolute, okay? And then the other thing is you can recoup payments. Let's say you accidentally overpay an employee. You can recoup them with some kind of written agreement that says, I agree that I will pay back, I overpaid $50, I'll pay $10 per pay period for the next 5 weeks. You do need a signed payroll deduction form for that. That's now under the protection of the wage and hour division. So be super careful if you have any kinds of deductions from paychecks that could end up, getting you in trouble.
Perfect. Well, we don't have any questions, so we're gonna ask some questions for ourselves.
Exactly. Oh, let's see here. How do you
Oh, we
calculate
do.
pre-family pay? Oh, good. That's good. The way I would do, it's a great question. The way I would do it is similar to the way that the state does. You look back at the last 5 calendar quarters and you calculate average pay on that basis. And again, you could speak to family if you have nuances like variable pay components. You can talk to them about that, but you just do the same thing the state does in terms of calculating what the benefit pay is. So that's how I would do it. It comes up as an average. Well, since we don't have a lot of questions, I thought we could ask a few. Let's talk about intermittent leave. By definition, and this is also under FMLA, intermittent leave is where, let's say I have to go through chemotherapy and I'm going to be out, half a day every week. That's called intermittent leave, where I'm taking family for half a day every week. So it can go on for a year. I can have intermittent leave for a year from the event. Meaning that if I go through chemo for a year, then I'm entitled to, 1, have my job held, 2, my benefits are protected, and 3, I receive family pay from the agency. This is probably the most complex scenario for most businesses, and my advice to you is be very clued in to that that benefits site on family, so you know what's going on with the claim, but also track it yourself. How many hours are people missing, so that over time, you come up with what's called the 12-week protected period, so that when the 12 weeks end, let's say I get a half day here, a half day there, and eventually it ends up being 12 weeks. At that point, family and all the protections end, and then you can go back to the arrangement before family. So, but I advise everyone to track it too. Track it. The agency tracks it, but I think you should track it too. Because then you know when it's going to end and when things change. And remember, intermittent leaves means I have the same rights as someone who's totally off family. My job doesn't go away. And this is going to be painful because a lot of times it feels like an attendance issue. If people are, we had another client where this lady used intermittent family, and she said, "Oh, I'm having mental health issues." That's what it was based on. And, "Oh, I'm having a stressful day. I have to leave for the day." Very disruptive to the business, but she was protected under family. So that's a tough situation. Tracking the hours is very important. Next question. Who pays the individuals? We probably already got that hint earlier, but it's the agency. You do not have to pay them. The agency does all of that themselves, okay? Just like unemployment. Can seasonal workers, you probably got that. Yes, if they've earned $2,500, they are eligible for family. And let's see, next question. How many times can they access it? They can access it once a year, one leave per calendar year. If they exhaust all their 12 weeks on one leave, they can do that.
Yep. And I think one thing too, Audrey, that's important for everyone to understand, if they don't know this already, is that just because you're granted family leave doesn't mean you're granted it for the entire 12 weeks either.
That's true. As you could tell earlier, most people were off 10 weeks. Some people might be on 2 weeks. It depends on the health condition. I would just assume, though, parental bonding, pregnancy leave probably will be 12 weeks because
Right.
employees really like that. But I'd say illness, it depends. It depends on the condition.
Right.
That's a
And
good
if
point,
I'm
Dusty.
granted only 2 or 3 weeks, that's my
Mhm.
once for the year.
Yes, yes, that's
It's
right.
one situation. So I think that's
Mhm.
important for people to understand as well. It can't just keep getting used and used. Oh, I have headaches, I'm sick, and keep continuing it. It's you have one situation and you can use it for however many weeks you are granted
Mhm.
by the agency or the private plan that you're on.
Yeah, and the agency gets certification from a physician, the treating physician. So the physician is what tells them the length. I'd say the messiest ones are mental health issues, because that could be open-ended, and that's when tracking intermittent leave is really important. Our multi-state, we talked about this earlier, multi-state employers expect,
Yes.
yes, they are. Only for their Colorado employees, and if they have less than 10 employees, if they count all, let's say they have less than 10 employees in Colorado, if they have more than 10 employees nationwide, that does count for the tax, all the employees. 1099 workers are, so the answer is yes, they are eligible. They can opt in on their own. In fact, that's a fairly popular benefit among gig workers. They can get family coverage if they pay the tax themselves, right, directly to the agency. All right, all right, so we're going to talk a few other aspects. No other questions so far?
Nope, we'll keep moving
Okay.
forward, but I'm
All
I'm
right,
ready
so
for
let's
them.
move through some of the more complex aspects of family, just as a quick review. Um, They have the right to take family leave at any point in their employment. So I could be an employee for a day. If I've earned more than $2,500 from a previous employer, I'm entitled to my family leave. And that's so they can leave. All right. Now, if I'm a brand new employee, I take family leave, but I've been here less than 6 months, you're not obligated to keep the job open. Right. And you're not obligated to keep their benefits. The only thing they get there is if they're paid through family. But any employees that have been employed with you for a minimum of 6 months, their job needs to be held open, and they need to be able to return to the same position or an equivalent position when they get back. And there's no penalties. You don't give them a written warning for taking family leave. It's considered retaliation. All health care benefits must continue. This is a pain point for many businesses because oftentimes there are no arrangements made. The employee goes off on leave. And by the way, healthcare benefits is a really wrong title for this because it includes most benefits there, as you can see. I don't know why they call it healthcare, but here's the thing. If you don't think through in advance how to handle these benefit deductions and many times most businesses have people pay a portion of their benefits on their own. If you don't think that through and the employee takes family leave, now you have a difficult choice to make. One, that the employee owes you back deductions for the duration of, and if they've been out 12 weeks, that's a pretty hefty bill, or they don't come back, right? So my advice is you make sure you have a plan before they go. Nice discussion. Hey, I heard you're going to go on family leave. Awesome. Or, oh my goodness, you're going on family leave. I hope you recover soon. Let's talk about your benefits. They're going to remain in place while you're gone. I just want to assure you're going to be just fine there. Sometimes if it's a health condition, that's the first thing they worry about. But you say, now let's talk about what we're going to do here when you get back. And so you're getting all these options you pay upon return from leave. I think that's risky. If employees decide not to return after leave, you have to eat that cost as the employer. So that's the risk there. You can offset those deductions with accrued PTO and vacation top-offs. We talked about that earlier. Or you can have the employee pay you directly while they're on leave. They can bring a personal check or send a personal check to you for the benefit premiums, whatever works. But the goal is you create some kind of a plan with the employee, work through with them how to do that. They want to have a plan just as much as you do, because the last thing many people want is to come back from leave, especially if they live with reduced pay and have a big bill waiting for them for their benefits. I also advocate to be super nice if that happens and give them if you can, an option to repay over several pay periods, which is easier versus one big bill. Because again, the risk is they leave and then you have to eat all the costs. The other option, the last ditch option, if you can't get any of that, is you can go collect through legal means like small claims courts, which is hard, but if you really want to do it, that's available to you.
Exactly. All right, we do have a question, and I think what's important for everybody to understand as well is that this is a lot of information that you need to handle as a small business owner, and they make it very confusing for all businesses. So relying on a partner like Audrey that can help, relying on someone like us that can help you put in the right place for these programs, they're important. If you're a 15-person company and you go down 2 employees throughout the year, that's going to be a problem for you. So do you have a plan in place? Are you able to handle those things? Not even just from a fiduciary responsibility of the benefits, but also from making sure that your clients are still kept happy and you guys are still able to perform the work that you're looking for. All right,
Yeah.
that slide brought a lot of questions, Audrey. So
All right, bring it on.
let's start with the first one. Okay. How would a 1099 worker be guaranteed return to work after their leave if they had worked for 6 months, but their gig work had ended by the time their leave was over? Great question.
Ah, that's a good little legal wrinkle. So, by definition, and this is true from an IRS, because this is where laws intersect and they don't make sense, right? So, by definition, and under the IRS, a 1099 worker is not guaranteed employment, is it? I mean, if you guaranteed it, they'd be an employee. So, I don't think they have necessarily the same protections as employees with regard to keeping the position open. However, that being said, you can be nice and talk to them about, do you want to come back if you have a place open, but they don't have the same rights as employees when it comes to holding a position or protecting them. I think the way that gig workers work or 1099 is they get the benefit. They have the benefit of being paid while they're on leave.
Yeah.
But 1099, I would not even be tempted to treat them like an employee, given that the IRS could go after you for miscategorizing a 1099 and go after you for back taxes. So I would just say, just let the 1099 worker tell you what's going on, and don't guarantee anything, because that's really the nature of the relationship, is that, the jobs come and go. And so, you can't keep something guaranteed open. It's a different animal altogether. So I think they
Right.
just give access to benefits.
Absolutely. All right, we've got a few other questions. So if an employer typically provides holiday pay as a regular benefit, are they required to pay an employee who is out on family leave for that holiday?
No, they're inactive. And it's again your call, but it's, in most cases, much like FMLA, if someone is put on an inactive leave, meaning they're employees, but they're not receiving paychecks, regular paychecks, they're not if your handbook says, only active employees are entitled to holiday pay, then you're not obligated to pay it. And nobody expects. I mean, honestly, most people don't expect their holiday pay while they're on family leave, because they're receiving family benefits. And if you pay them holiday pay, you could be creating a mess where you're topping off more than what they should be earning. So I would just say don't pay them holidays while they're on family leave.
And I think the most important part for Melissa that asked that question is the part that Audrey said about what's stated in your employee handbook, because
Yes.
that's what you're having your employees sign each and every year. If you're not having your employees sign a handbook each and every year, well, let's have a separate conversation about that. But you can always relay back to that because you can say, look, Jake, you signed here. You knew that. And whether they did or didn't read it, they signed off on that. So I think that's very important because then you have a binding contract that you're able to go back to.
Hmm. Yep. What other
All
question?
right. We have some more questions. This is a good question as well. So can you please explain the formula headcount? We have a few seasonal employees as well as part-time and full-time. Also, I believe that the employers have to enter the headcount online at the beginning of every year now. If the ER does not update the headcount online, family will assume it is 10 plus, correct?
I think so. If you're hovering near the border, I mean, if you, yes, I think so. So, and I haven't asked them this question. I'm just giving you my, that's a great question, by the way. It's something worth checking into. But that if you remember back a few slides, we talked about what a seasonal worker work looks like in terms of average hours. They count how many work weeks do they have based on how many days they've worked. My advice to you is to come up with that number to match what the agency considers to be someone who qualifies for family leave. But there isn't an easy formula. I mean, when it comes to seasonal workers by design, they've made it quite complicated so that seasonal workers still have the same rights, but they have to. There's a whole math formula you have to calculate to determine whether or not they're entitled to family leave. So, that's a great question. I think that's something I should probably do some research on. Sorry, I
We
can't
will.
answer it directly, but I think it's a great question.
We appreciate your honesty though, and we know that you'll call them and figure it out for
Oh
us.
yeah, I
So
love that. I'll find and what I'll do is they make a note of that so we can send that to everybody as a follow-up because seasonal work, just by looking at it, is a very complicated scenario. So
right. And I mean you have to think about it. There's obviously seasonal work for blue collar industries because you have people that are out during the summertime working construction a lot more, but then
yeah.
also for white collar industries. Think about tax season. You have people that are retired, they come in and work for a CPA firm only during the busiest times of the year during the spring. So
Hmm.
are they seasonal? Are they 1099? Depends on how you classify them as the employer and what the contract is that you have in place. So yeah, it is a great question, and we will make sure
Yeah,
to dig
and
into that.
what I'm looking for is to see if they have a formula that an employer can use to calculate exactly when these employees qualify for family. I would like to know that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
And then this kind of goes on that as well. So how do you calculate pre-family pay for hourly employees when the wages are fluctuating? I think that's kind of what it was been discussed is going back over that 5 months, or excuse me,
Five
five
calendar
quarters, figuring
quarters.
out the
Hmm.
average.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. Just match what the agency does as the
Perfect.
safest approach.
Great questions. Audrey likes to be
Love
challenged,
it.
so please
I
keep them
love it. I
coming.
mean, now I have to call family to get an answer to a question I didn't know. I just love that. All right, so let's move on. I know that was probably the hardest slide of all that we had to live through here. All right, so what if employers offer short and long-term disability plans, primarily short-term disability plans? Family leave could also be a short-term disability event. Does short-term disability substitute family? No, it does not. And if you talk to any of the STD providers, they will tell you that they're offsets only. So this works particularly well when you have highly compensated people making 40 plus thousand a year. If you own, and they're fairly cheap. I mean, short-term disability plans are much cheaper than they used to be because the family benefits out there. But if you have somebody who's used to making $100,000 and they're only going to get 50 while they're on family leave, your short-term disability plan typically would be 60 or 70%, even 80% in some cases. That might offset the loss of income while they're out. So many employers like to do that, particularly for highly compensated individuals, because employees take a big financial hit when they're on family leave. If you don't have very robust PTO vacation policies, it's probably the best thing to do. If you do offer short and long-term disability, particularly short-term, you should give written notice to your employees that it's available. And I would talk to your broker to get the language right because I just went into techno language where you offset and top off and blah blah blah. And that's hard to explain to the average employee. So talk to your broker because they can provide probably some materials for you to explain this to employees so they know how it works. This is really important for the really valuable high compensated employees that are going on family to just let them know that you're covering for them with this extra income protection through short-term disability. They are not designed to match family benefits. Just tell them that it's not a substitute. All right, so what about other state benefits? Well, unemployment, they can't collect from family and unemployment in any way, or vice versa. So you can't do that. And workers' compensation, the same thing applies. You can't collect workers' comp and family at the same time. So they don't apply. All right. And workers' compensation has a whole slew of regulations around job protections and benefit protections that are different from family. So much more robust than family. So I wouldn't even go there and talking about that. Workers' comp has its own slew of regulations that you have to comply with. All right. So how do you manage this process? Well, I have a nice simple approach here. So I'm going to rock you through some recommendations. I talked about this the first time, but here are some specific steps you can take to make this work for the business. One, you are legally obligated to inform employees that family exists, or your PFML, private family medical leave plan. You're legally obligated to tell your employees that you have one or the other. All right. There are legal posters, and if you don't have a legal poster, let Jake and me know. I'll send you one because I have a BBSI legal poster for free. If you didn't buy one, they're typically $40 or $50 to buy, but I'm happy to get one to you. The other thing is to have a policy in your handbook. That's ideal. So I've drafted a couple policies that they're easy for employees to read, to understand. And of course, if you need a hand in that, I'm happy to help you through that. But you should have some kind of policy that says, here's what we do when someone comes with family. It's more than the poster. It says, what happens if I found out that my wife is pregnant? What do I do in my company? And that's what the policy should tell them. The other thing is to train your supervisors. That piece is the biggest risk factor for any employer is if supervisors don't fully understand how to manage the situation with family. I mean, I've had a couple situations happen just by naivety where somebody walks up to a manager and says, hey, I'm going to take family leave next week. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to tell you. And they get mad because, wait, I need coverage. And one employer said, you're fired. It's like, no, that's not legal. Stop there. You can't say that. So they don't know. I mean, how many people know all the nuances of family? But there are a lot of employee rights that supervisors should know. One, they can't say no. They have to let this person apply for family. Whether they think it's valid or not, doesn't matter. The best legal course here is to be respectful to the employee, whether they believe them or not. And they can't go retaliate on the employee by treating them negatively or shunning them, because then, that employee could go to the agency and file a retaliation claim. Now, it's rare that these things happen, but when they happen, they're terrible. It's a terrible situation where the employer has to defend their behavior, and the onus and the burden of proof is on the employer to prove that retaliation didn't happen. And that's a hard thing to do. So the best course of action is to train supervisors on family, make them read the poster, make them read the policy, speak to them during your staff meetings about if somebody comes up to you with family, here's what you do. Send them off to the office manager to get a deeper explanation, but don't react negatively and don't say no. You're not allowed to do that legally, so don't do it, all right? And
Yeah.
then the next
And I
step is,
think,
go
well,
ahead.
I think just to slow you down, I think what's important about that too, Audrey, is that we can train our employees and we can do everything in our power to help them do the processes the right way.
Yeah.
But we're all emotional. We're all humans at the end of the day, and you may react one way or the other. So if you do have a retaliation claim that comes against you, do you have an employment practices liability policy to cover you? I don't
Yes,
know.
it's a
And is
good
it a
question.
true policy or is it just a
Mhm.
small little limit under general liability policy? So they're not expensive insurance policies by any means, but a lot of companies don't have them because they're not talked to about. So again, it's just as we're going through this process, employee handbooks, retaliations, all of these things, they all relate back to the employment practices liability insurance or EPLI.
Yeah, and you have access to an attorney once you get to EPLI that can help you respond to agency complaints. So that's a nice thing. All right, so the next step is to formalize the process, the notification, and share with everybody. And formalizing means you have, let's say you don't have any way of the employee to formally notify. Do they send you an email? Do they walk up to their supervisor? I mean, how do employees tell you they're going on family leave? Formalize that. Answer that question by formalizing. It could be just as simple as a form, or you say, all right, I want you to send me an email, tell me what's going on. I mean, it's that simple, but you got to have something formal so they know what to do. Because oftentimes no one has any idea when, let's say I find there was a guy that a few months ago, found out he was terminal and he didn't know what step one to do. It's such a mind-boggling notion that he was very, very ill that he didn't even know what to say or do. And so his supervisor was kind enough to say, first things first, go file for family, and let's talk about, we'll take it one step at a time. Let's get that done first. So that's the way to do it. Part of the process too is that whoever's handling your payroll, if you decide that the company is going to do top offs for using PTO, sick time, or vacation to cover benefits premiums, you want to have a process behind that. You want to know how that's going to work, and make sure that you have also a process on recouping those deductions that they're not paying while they're on leave. Make sure you have a pretty firm process for that, because it could get expensive fairly. If they had family coverage, for example, they're paying $500 per pay period. That's a huge bill and a huge potential liability to the company if it's not thought through and there's a repayment plan.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
that's something to be careful with.
I know we have a few more slides we're going to get through, but we do have a really good question that we'll go to quickly, and then we'll jump back in and finish up the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so if an employee is notified you of a surgery that they are having, but are only expecting to use sick time and PTO to cover the time they expect to be out, should we, as the business owner, also share info about Colorado Family so they're aware of the benefits?
Yes. Yeah. It's ultimately their choice to use it. Strongly encourage them to do that. But yeah, you can do that. As I mentioned earlier, any kind of company provided leave, paid leave, can be used. All right. So I have, this is a quick, easy form. I realize it's a form. HR people like forms. I get that. But it's quick and easy. It's on one page where people can managers can have a conversation with employees about family leave. It's a process. It can be sent to the payroll people so they know what to do. But this is one tool out of many that you can use. Like I said, you can use emails, whatever works for you. But the goal is that you have a good sense of how long they're going to be gone, when they plan to return. If there's intermittent leave, what does that look like? If you allow for vacation and PTO to top off, what does that look like? So that's really in that form is available if you want, if you need it. So on to the next slide. All right, so what do you do? And we're going to move fast here. So while they're gone, let's say somebody's been with you over 6 months, you can't replace that position with a permanent employee without having to rehire the other one that's coming in, right? So your choices are to hire a temporary employee. You can reallocate their work to someone else. You can outsource it to a temporary. You can delay projects, but you got to have a plan. And this is something you can think about now as a company. How would you handle situations where someone is out of work? And this is particularly important if you have less than, like 10 employees. This could be super disruptive. So what are you going to do? All right. You got to make sure that you keep those benefits up and running. Even if you don't hear from the employee, you can't cancel them. If this is by law, you can't do that. All right. The other thing is you can't allow employees to work while they're on family leave. They can talk to the family agency about being intermittent, but if they're considered to be out altogether, it's not a good thing for you to have employees get paid by you and family at the same time. It's going to impact their benefits. You're going to have to collect back some of the overpayment by law. It's also tempting but risky not to pay them. That's a wage and hour issue. And so you don't want to not pay them while they're on family, even though they're getting family benefits. That's something you can get in trouble for. And, if you're not sure and this employee wants to work while they're on family, call family and ask them what options there are. Okay. Because it's not impossible, but if the doctor says they got to rest and they got to stay home, then you need to make sure that happens. And I think we missed something toward the end there. I want to make sure I didn't miss that. And then I think the last thing is to make sure the employee talks to you. Please be nice to these people. You can actually call them and check to see how they are. And they can tell you when they're coming back. If you feel like you're in the dark, you'll see the HR benefits site on family. But if you're in the dark, call them and see what's going on. All right, on to the next slide. And then, of course, what does retaliation look like? This is illegal, so companies can get in a lot of trouble for this, and it's very easy to file a retaliation claim through the agency. They have to click a link on the website, and boom, now the employer has a big problem. It could be that somebody is given a warning, even if they're a poor performing employee, it's very risky to give someone a warning or suspension after they ask for leave. They haven't gone on leave yet, but you're going to give them a warning. It's risky because it looks like retaliation. Again, the burden of proof is on the employer to prove it didn't happen. Reducing pay, denying people additional hours is also risky. Deciding not to hire someone because you heard they use family, that's also retaliation. Telling someone they can't come back to leave within the prescribed leave period. They just can't come back. You decide you've changed your mind. They're now fired. That's retaliation. Failing to keep, and this is one thing that supervisors have to know. You can't allow their health information or confidential information to spread around like gossip inside the organization. Think of domestic abuse scenarios where somebody files a domestic abuse family leave. That's the worst thing that could happen. Or somebody has a very sensitive life issue that's nobody's business. You got to be very hyper vigilant about making sure the information stays locked up, because if it gets out there and it's gossip, it's retaliation. Also, telling people not to use at family is also risky. Interfering, like slow balling, just making it really slow process of getting information back to the agency about the employee's situation is also retaliatory, or even lying about their information is retaliatory. And then, of course, not proactively letting employees know about family is also risky, or a new one, threatening an employee's immigration status if they want to take family leave is also considered to be retaliatory. Okay.
Yeah, and that is an interesting new one too. And I'm sure that
Mhm.
there are plenty of attorneys that are driving around Colorado right now looking for employees that have heard this from an employer, and they're probably going to come after somebody. So do things the right way, put the processes in place, and have something as a last line of defense, like an insurance policy. It's not if when these things happen, it's just when. So I mean, your company's going to grow, problems are going to happen. So let's figure it out before they do.
Okay, on to the next slide. Just real quick. Um, Family is real. It's really here. We do have, if you go to the next slide, again, some links to the poster as well as a toolkit for employers and a toolkit for employees that you can access on the family website. Jake, your chance in 2 minutes or less to talk up PFML.
Yeah, and you guys have heard me talk about it a decent amount. Obviously, Lakeside can help with different insurance programs, but the private paid family leave, this is something that we do for a lot of our clients. So if you are interested in looking at quotes, please reach out. It's a pretty quick process. You already have all the information on your employee's name, their date of birth, and gender. All we need is their salary information as well. We take a spreadsheet, send it on to our markets, and we provide you with the best quote possible. So again, it's not going to be a great fit for all businesses, but as the state rate goes from 0.9 to 0.88, not a huge change, but so will the private plans. They're definitely going to change. Again, I have businesses that are all the way from a 0.5 all the way up to a 0.8. So as a business owner, you can recoup some funds, you can pay a little bit less than you were originally paying, but the employer doesn't have to pay more than 0.45. Same with the employee. The most that the employee can pay is that 0.45 rate. So again, I know some of these things are confusing. You might want to get on a call to ask any questions you may have with Audrey or I. Please feel free to reach out. We want to be a resource. We want to help small businesses. They make it hard on purpose. So let's work together and figure out how we can help one another, make sure that we're all in compliance. So and that's kind of it. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. We did it with 1 minute left, Audrey, even with all the questions. And thank you all for joining today. I know it was a lot of information. It's a bit exhausting, but we do have to help each other out, and happy to kind of have a separate conversation like I mentioned earlier. So I'll send out a recording of the webinar and I'll give Audrey the final 30 seconds to wrap it on up.
Yeah, if you need a hand, let us know. You got my email there. I'm happy to help you with handbook policies. BBSI, we specialize in having HR people and benefits people and risk and benefits and business consulting for any small business. So we make custom handbooks for clients with these kinds of situations in mind. So we're here to help if you need it.
They're awesome. And so is Audrey. So thank you all so
Thank
much. Have a great
you.
rest of the week. Enjoy the end of summer. Can't believe fall's coming, but it'll be here soon. And again, for the private family leave, one other thing too, if you want a private plan, you have to put it in place before the end of October.
Okay, that's a great point. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, everybody.
I saw Jenny. I see your chat. We'll send out that spreadsheet that Audrey
Yeah,
created too. We'll
yeah,
we'll
I'll
get out
send it.
any tools that you want. So,
Yep, yep.
all right.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, do we have one more Q&A? Oh, just a bunch of thank yous. Thank
All
you all.
right.